Welcome to a Land Rover guide to the Land Cruiser.
The steering system on a Land Cruiser is very similar to a Land Rover actually. They've done a lot of the same engineering. Steering column's pretty standard. It's got the universal joint on here and then a collapsible steering shaft runs down here. It then comes down to this section. It's got the I assume there's another universal joint under there and that gaiter in there. The steering box on the top here has got really good access because you've got the two unions, inlet and outlet, just next to each other. Very easy to get access to. And then there's the adjusting nut just on here, so you can adjust with a lot of room. It's very easy to get access to. It's not too bad on the Land Rover either, but one of the pipes is around the corner, so this one's a little bit better access. Going down underneath, the steering box is bolted here on the outside of the chassis leg. Now, it makes it a lot easier for access and a lot easier to take it off because you take these bolts off and you just pull it off. But the drop arm seems quite vulnerable to me because it's just in the wheel arch here. That seems like a bit of a vulnerable place. The Defender is kind of set back in here, just in front of the spring, and operates forwards, whereas this is very forward and operates backwards. So I think the Land Rover's, this is better for access, but the Land Rover's probably better because it's more protected. This isn't getting as much dust and crap thrown at it, I would say. This is a really interesting contraption. They've got this kind of ball joint here that extends beyond here, and they've got this rubber boot that's strapped around with a hole in it for a grease nipple, and so this is rubber and it's got grease in it, and you grease it and it's just a bit odd really. And you've got these clamps that go around it on there, and you've got, so it's just seems a bit like an odd way of doing what is just a ball joint, that you just need a ball joint in there and going into the steering rod there. So I don't really like these. There's another one on the other end and they're just a bit odd. They just seem like they're going to wear a bit too much. Fair enough, you can grease them, but you can get ball joints that you grease. So I don't really like that Land Rover. Although Land Rover's ball joint isn't that amazing either. I think they're both crap. So we've got the, whatever you call this, drag link steering rod along here, comes along, and it's got the other ball joint on here, which is still just as odd. Then attaches to the steering arm, which then transmits back across the track rod at the back. This is an inspiration because this lower arm on here is part of holding in the kingpin in the bottom of the swivel housing, but it's boltable. You can bolt it on and remove it, which means they've got a consistent casting for the swivel housing, and they just bolt the arm on depending on if it's left or right hand drive. So this one's only got the one arm. The Land Rover is actually cast. It used to be cast both in older models, and then it was cast to be handed, so you need the swivel housing to be handed to the vehicles. You can't just swap an axle over from left hand drive to right hand drive, or from a left hand drive to a right hand drive vehicle. So this is a better arrangement here. These steering arms are actually quite meaty, and the clamp here for locking the threads of the ball joint into the bar are really meaty. That's probably an M10 in there, 15mm socket, whereas on a Land Rover they're tiny fiddly things. You've got two of them, they just don't inspire much confidence. This thing is really meaty. One at the other end as well, that's pretty awesome. The steering damper looks piddly and tiny compared to the Land Rover. The Land Rover is a bit meatier. And these have got integral ball joints on the end, so it means if the ball joint wears and the rubber cracks and breaks, which is very likely to happen, then you've got to replace the entire steering damper. This happened on another vehicle last week. It cost about 120 quid for one of these from Toyota. So pretty ridiculous. So I think because Land Rover's just got an eyelet with a bush, and you put a bolt through and it holds on one end, at this end, and then the other end has got a bush, goes through the chassis, and you just put a nut on the end. So I think Land Rover wins for the steering damper. The track rod at the back It similar to Land Rover, it then connects one wheel to the other behind the differential. It's a lot meatier, just like the front drag link. The difference here is this goes across the top of the radius arms here, whereas on a Land Rover it goes underneath. So I guess there's a benefit. You could take the radius arms off without having to take the track rod off. The ball joints in here are pretty much identical to Land Rover. Same sort of thing. Clamps are meaty as well. So there's really it's just a direct comparison really. They're just as good as each other, and they're left and right hand threaded, so you can adjust the toe in and toe out based on undoing the clamps and turning this bar one way or the other. In terms of protection, it's probably got more protection actually, because the radius arms are lower here. You're less likely to bash the steering track rod, but you're going to bash the radius arms instead. I'm not sure which is better, but it is quite well protected. Out of the way, Defender's got the guard on here to stop it getting totally mashed out of proportion, but I'm sure there's aftermarket things you could fit. So on the whole, the steering systems are pretty much comparable. There's nothing really that sways it either way. I think they're pretty much the same type of engineering. Well, exactly the same type of engineering in terms of which bars they've got where, what type of steering box they've got, and the steering shaft is all identical. So I don't think anyone wins on this. They've just got the same technology for the same job.
Click here to go to the next video. Right here. That's where the button is. Right there.